Thank you, dear friends. As you heard from Janos Annus, we are celebrating 100 years of Egon Diczfaluszy's birth. And my pleasant duty is to summarize for you his life and achievements. Next. I will tell you the five main epochs of Egon Diczfaluszy's life as we move on one by one. Next. The first life was between Miskolc in northern Hungary and Szeged at the extreme south of it, which is per se interesting. Next. You can see the three generations. Egon is the boy to the right, the father, and in the back, the grandfather. Next. I was given by Egon this picture of the wedding of Egon Diczfaluszy's grandparents. They were all a family of military people, and he himself next started in the army, as you can see from this picture. Next. And this is an old image of Miskolc, the birthplace in northeastern Hungary. Next. And another view, always with old pictures from his own days. Next. And many of the things that I will show you today are taken from a sort of autobiography by Egon himself at the Sir Henry DAL lecture in 1978, which was entitled Reproductive Endocrinology and the Merry Post-War Period. Next. And in that lecture, he said, how did I become a reproductive endocrinologist? By the Hungarian approach. As a second-year medical student at the University of Szeged, I was working in the Department of Pathology and Bacteriology of Professor György Ivanovic. And my first task was to repeat a study by the Nobel laureate Professor Hans von Euler and his co-workers in Stockholm, who had found transaminase activity in suspensions of yeast and E. coli bacilli. Next. And much to his surprise, Egon says, I just could not confirm their findings, and my professor felt that I must publish this. This negative report in 1942 was my first publication. It was probably instrumental in bringing me to Stockholm after the war, when I had the privilege of working as Professor Hans von Euler's assistant during the years 1946-1947. Next. And here comes the second stage of Egon's life in Sweden, in Stockholm, at the Karolinska Hospital. Next. And here is a picture of Egon, first professor at the Karolinska Institute and Hospital in Stockholm, the Nobel laureate Professor Hans von Euler. Next. Now, just for the record the paper that he published in 1942 on the question of, I don't speak German, and I translated that Humanisierung as reanimation by bacterial cells. So the first paper by Egon. Next. But the real important first paper in Sweden with Hans von Euler was about the resistance of Escherichia coli to streptomycin induced in vitro. And resistance to bacteria today is a very, very important topic. Next. His second father and second professor was Axel Westman, who was professor of gynecology and obstetrics at Karolinska, and who unfortunately died prematurely in 1960. Next. He was his teacher in research in the field of obstetrics and gynecology, and was famous for his studies on tubal motility in rabbits. He created a small glass window into the abdomen and registered the tubal movements during 24 hours or even longer. He was also his master in teaching him the real Swedish way of drinking both folk cognac, the easy, cheap version, and genuine Martell. Next. Now we come to his great production in the field of reproductive endocrinology, starting with this paper on the formation mechanism of estrogenic hormones. Next. And then his doctorate thesis on chorionic gonadotrophin and estrogens in the human placenta, starting his interest, which was the major interest in his scientific life, on the human placenta and then, of course, the fetus. Next. We come now to his first main international achievement. And this is from the Swedish press when they reported on a $500,000 grant to Egon Diczfalusy by the Ford Foundation to study and basically found fetal endocrinology. Next. I will show you a few pictures of those merry days. I am there with dark glasses and all the friends. Some are no longer with us. Some, thank God, are still with us. Next. Here is another picture of the staff of the hormone laboratoriate, of which Egon Diczfalusy was the chief. Next. And we come now of the part of life that I shared with him, and this was a privilege for me throughout half a century or even more. And the first meeting at which I presented a paper with Egon Diczfalusy was the Acta Endocrinologica Congress in 1965 in Hamburg. Next. And then a number of papers and presentations at congresses followed. This is one of the Italian group, Mancuso, Dell'Acqua, and myself, always at the 1965 Congress. Next. One of the important review that we wrote together was for a meeting in Rome of the International Study Group for Steroid Hormones on Estriol Metabolism in Mid-Pregnancy. Next. One of the important achievements of Egon during these years was the publication, the putting together and publication of the Karolinska Symposia on Research Methods in Reproductive Endocrinology. This was done in collaboration by the Karolinska Institute, the World Health Organization, and the money coming from the Ford Foundation. Next. Then came a book which Egon wrote about the contraceptive revolution, which was his second lifetime interest, and to which he devoted some 30 years of his life. Next. Let me show you one picture of a holiday in an island in Sicily. You see the Diczfalusy family, Egon to the right, Anne to the left. I am there with the two children of Egon. Some of you have met them. Next. And I, at some point, left his lab, and he was not pleased. And you told me, are you going to the Population Council because you will get a better salary, or because you like better the type of research they do there, or because you will be able to do better politicking there? And I remember smiling at him and saying, but of course, all the three, sir. And, you know, somehow one might have felt that this would be the end of my contacts with him, and many of you know how that was wrong. Next. And now we come to the third life of Egon in Geneva at the World Health Organization. Next. And I would call this the flying era, because he was flying to the four corners of the world. Often I was with him because at that time I was working for WHO, and we built a lot of projects and programs during those years. Next. And this is a picture from a meeting at WHO in the mid-70s when we were discussing the work of one of the task forces. Next. This is in Thailand, as you can see from the background, and the members of the task force with Egon in the middle. And I suppose you can recognize some of. To the far right is Joe Goldziher, who, by the way, tomorrow will celebrate his 101st anniversary, still alive and well, and then Ken Fotherby. Next. And in 1990, he wrote, "A modern interpretation of history is said to be based on the analysis of the history of ideas, and the history of the second part of the 20th century represents an entirely new departure in this respect. For the first time in the history of mankind, the policies emerging from world conferences organized by the various specialized agencies of the United Nations broaden views and perspectives and perceptions. So he pointed out to the importance of the United Nations specialized agencies. Next. And I remember a symposium that was held in Szeged for the 25th anniversary of the foundation of what is today known as the WHO Special Program of Research, Development, and Research Training in Human Reproduction. And I participated in that and summarized the work of WHO for the first 25 years of the program. Next. And I labeled Egon's fourth life the world, because he really became a man of the world, an advocate for mankind, and did a tremendous work in that area. Next. And getting old, he focused his attention on the third and fourth age and on the situation of women in developing countries who are often alone during the last years of their lives. Next. And here is a nice quotation. I myself represent the future. Yes, you heard right. I said the future. I represent the future of the past. As Paul Valéry puts it, are you not the future of all memories stored within you, the future of the past? Next. And he wrote, the wind of new realities is blowing with increasing strength. It is up to us to decide whether we prefer protective wind screens or new types of windmills. Again, he broadened his horizon to talk about the future of mankind, the health of women all over the world. Next. And one of the last major lectures that he gave was on the demographic revolution and our common future. As you know, humanity went to extreme fear due to the demographic explosion to a situation where in the West the reproduction is not even enough to replace the previous generation. And so the aging world, too many grandparents for too few grandchildren. Quo vadimus. Next. And let me show you some of the major awards that Egon received. Here is the ceremony of the awarding of a degree honoris causa by the University of Edinburgh in Scotland in probably 2005. And the next is the awarding by the king's daughter of the Prince Mahidol Prize. Prince Mahidol was the father of the king, the grandfather of this lady, who never became king because he died before his son could access the throne. Next. And let me finish by talking about Egon's fifth life, which I called ED phone home, back in Szeged where everything started. Next. And I also call this Return to the Future in Szeged. This is a picture from the city. And the whole thing started when he was thinking, I'm getting old, I need to leave a legacy. Next. And as a legacy, I recommended to him that we create a foundation in his name, actually in his name and that of his wife. And this is a picture of the people who participated in this first conference. And I have many friends from all over the world in this picture. And I don't know if you can recognize some. Quite a few are no longer with us, but it was an impressive first start for our foundation. Next. Well, a little autobiography, Egon, my wife, and myself. Next. This is Egon with the chairman of the department in those days, Laszlo Kovacs. And next, this is the three of us, Egon, his wife, and myself, again at one of the meetings of the foundation. Next. And you see, this is how the establishment of the Egon and Diczfalusy Foundation was announced. And it is stated that the foundation aims at supporting scientific work conducted in the field of reproductive health. And everything here, the sentences, empathy, science, hope, medicina, ancora, salutis, and the two seals were personally selected by Egon. Next. And I would like to end by recalling this series of the magazine Life International, when many years ago they started a new series about the Romans, how people born to rule won an empire and forever shaped our world. The reason I like this is not because I am a Roman, which is obvious, but because although Egon did not found an empire, but he forever shaped our lives, and so in that sense, he shaped our world and the world of those who will come after us. Next. And I want to finish with a sentence by the greatest of all my compatriots, Leonardo da Vinci, who once said, "Unworthy is the disciple who does not overtake his master." And if I may say so, Leonardo da Vinci was a son of a bitch, because he knew that no one will overtake him, as much as I don't think any of us will overtake Egon. Thank you.